Hi everyone, Jason Gardner here. It is February 22nd. It is the last Friday of the A session for the spring semester. Many of us are now about 10 weeks away from having our master's degree. And today I'd like to review my final project presentation for my capstone project, where we're going to talk about communication styles and how they're utilized when individuals are placed into a room, given a common goal, but not given specific instructions for their roles or responsibilities. Over the course of this video, I hope to review the following bullet points with you, where we're going to introduce the case study and our preliminary hypothesis. We'll discuss the intentions and aims of the case study, introduce relevant communication styles to this study, review 10 research questions which have been inserted into my proposed case study, discuss limitations, risks, and assumptions, and finally wrap up. While this slide will be difficult to read from YouTube, it is just a brief indication of the number of citations that have been made in my case study proposal. Anybody who wishes to see this list in a more detailed or easy to read view, please feel free to reach out to me. While we have sufficient evidence to understand that groups are capable of completing projects when sat into a room and designated roles and responsibilities are assigned, we have to wonder what would happen to that same group of individuals if they were placed into a room, given a common goal, and no roles and responsibilities were assigned. The study hopes to focus on group communication dynamics to see if leaders will be elected in these groups, if leaders will be self-appointed, if groups opt to tackle the goals without a leader, and if there's any correlation between those selections, the demographics of the participants, and the ability to complete the task. Some of the intentions of the proposed case studies are shown here. We hope to provide a modern view of team dynamics to observe how hierarchies and matrix environments are impacting the overall quality of work. We want to look at an article that suggests that the role of leadership is to create cohesion amongst talented individuals while maintaining open channels of communication. This is relevant in the notion that a leader is not always the most qualified person for the technical aspects of a goal, but they might be the most charismatic and capable of keeping a team united in pursuit of that goal. And additionally, there's another study that will highlight in the case study, proposed case study, that hypothesizes that the absence of leadership will improve the overall team performance by removing bureaucracy and allowing employees to think creatively and collaboratively to solve a common problem. Relevant to the proposed case study are the following communication styles: persuasion and influence, negotiation, risk, workplace and leadership, personal relationship dynamics, and conflict. There are 10 proposed research questions that we hope to focus on in this case study. While I won't read through them line by line, I'll just quickly highlight them. In the first question, we're looking to see if participants will promote their own likability in order to sway a group. The second question is, we're hoping that if an influencer is highly regarded by the group, yet knowingly provides inaccurate information, we want to see if the group will speak up in favor of accomplishing the goal, or if they will follow the influencer for fear of losing social capital. This second question will obviously have to be undertaken by implanting an actor into a research group so that we can try and essentially sabotage the group's completion of the goal and see if the group is more worried about maintaining likability amongst the group or accomplishing the task. We're also curious to see if participants in a group will conduct informal interviews to try and select the most qualified individual in the room to lead the overall group. And we'll also look to see if there are individuals in the group that feel the need to win a negotiation before offering their skills. Think of this as a currency exchange. If I give you something of mine in terms of education and experience, what will I get out of it? We'd like to see if we can manipulate risk as it relates to accountability of the completion of the project. Essentially, we'd like to see if we can incentivize somebody to take accountability in a leadership role by increasing a monetary prize, or by possibly penalizing a leader for the failure to complete the task. We'd like to look at demographic information of the participants selected for the case study to see if there are any correlations amongst the participants who are voted into leadership roles or those who self-appoint leadership roles. When a group opts to use democracy and select a leader, we want to know if they base that decision based on the individual's qualifications or because that person appeared to take a leadership role by way of facilitation. A way I like to look at this is modern politics, where we don't always have the most qualified person in leadership roles, whether at a local level or a federal level, but sometimes it's just having the right name and the right face in the public eye that gets somebody appointed into a leadership role. We're also curious to study what happens if a group does not elect a leader and instead selects a method where they use smaller subgroups to complete the task, and how that will impact communication channels. Essentially, what we're saying here is that if there is no leader to direct traffic and ensure communication channels are open, how does communication foster itself? And finally, we want to look at individuals who rank their familial conflict communication styles with low scores, say a 1 or a 2 on a 5-point Likert scale. And we want to see what patterns are identifiable in how they interact with groups. These questions are relevant to the study because we want to see how demographic data might draw correlations between communication styles used in the study and how those communication styles are used in the pursuit of a common goal. If there's not a preconceived role or responsibility defined, we also want to know if individuals will elect a leader of the group based on education and relevant experience, or do they tend to elect a leader who is seen as likable, even if not qualified. Additionally, we'd like to see that if roles aren't defined, are there participants across certain demographics who will attempt to appoint themselves into leadership roles? Other questions this case study should help us answer would be to know if individuals can be incentivized to assume the accountability across a group if the rewards for success are manipulated. We'd like to know if individuals will seek compensation for offering their skills and education to the group, i.e., the what's in it for me. This won't necessarily be monetary, it might be some sort of other trade off, a quid pro quo, if you would. And finally, if a group fails to achieve the common goal, do they attribute the failure to their leader, a lack of leadership, or some other cause? As with any case study, there will be limitations, risks, and assumptions, one of which is that qualitative measures are dependent on the interpretation of researchers, and then there's the natural translation from qualitative to quantitative research. That can be interesting. There are resource limitations with time and money. Time and money will limit the ability to have an adequate sample size for the study group, and it will also limit our participant pool, as it will only be individuals who are willing to participate for some sort of a monetary reward, and it will also be limited to participants available in a geographic proximity to where the study is being located. Anytime actors are used in one of these case studies, you have to be concerned about the possibility of them being exposed, and if that exposure does occur, how does that taint the sample size of the information they're providing for you? And finally, the study relies on an assumption that groups are inherently in need of having a leader. So for this study, if a group chooses not to elect a leader, it will limit the data that we can take for the study, though we would need to notate that data and potentially discard a particular study group. In conclusion, we do expect that the case study will yield a wide range of results as it relates to completing the assigned tasks. What's important to note here is that we're not entirely focused on the completion of the task in terms of time ranges or efficiencies. We're more concerned with the communication styles being used to get to those finish lines. And with all that said, I'd like to thank you for listening. I look forward to jumping into the B session of the capstone project and eventually getting this thing into a defense. Thank you guys. Have a great spring break. Talk to you soon.